Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Shonen Express podcast, the podcast where we cover everything that comes out in Weekly Shonen Jump every single week. This week, we are going to cover Weekly Shonen Jump issue 45 of 2023. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this. If you're new here, remember that there will be spoilers for all of the series running in Weekly Shonen Jump in this video. But I will put the timestamps for when I talk about each series down in the description. So if you only read a couple of these series and you want to hear what I have to say about those series, I would love for you to hop on, just listen to those sections, and then go about your day. If you read all of Weekly Shonen Jump like I do, listen to this whole video. It'll be great. But if you don't want spoilers for certain things, I totally understand. That's why I put in the comments or in the description of the video, I put the timestamps so that we all know, so that we're all aware of where the spoilers will be. That said, this was a big week this week, and as always, I start with the cover page. Right, I start with what got the cover page, and this week the cover page went to One Piece, chapter 1094. So this was definitely a big One Piece chapter this week. First of all, the two-page color spread was awesome. The Shimatsuki kind of line here, you've got Kuina and her father and grandfather there, along with Ryuma, and it looks like some other Shimatsuki members all throughout, and this big dragon in the back, and Zoro obviously is front and center. That was really cool. I honestly, I wish it reminds me that we didn't get as much from Zoro in the Wano arc as I wanted, and I wish we had more clarity on who Zoro is, and maybe we'll still get that, and kind of maybe that's coming, right? I'm not saying it's not, but I wish we had a little bit more clarity on that so far. But from this color page looks awesome, is all I'm saying. It is an awesome looking color page, and it focuses on Zoro and Wano, which we haven't seen in a little bit. But to get in the chapter, there's a couple things that I want to talk about. First, I love that Vegapunk uses island clouds in his Vega tank. It makes a lot of sense. Of course, this is a technology that exists in the world that he would know about, and I just love that the world is cohesive like that. You know, Oda, the author of this series, is so good at bringing everything together that he's set up that of course, you know, little things like that happen all the time. I think it's really funny. I loved that Sanji, you know, he found her and says, when has my lady radar ever been wrong? And Vegapunk says, that sounds very unscientific, but I'll take it on faith. I thought that was really funny. Just like Vegapunk's comment on that. And of course, Sanji's right? They found Bonnie, and she is fighting Marines, and we get to see more of Bonnie's fights. We get this other move called NDE, or Near Death Experience, where it seems like she shoots people with a certain, you know, gun or whatever, and or goo, it looked like was on top of them, and then they after being shot with that, they like have this experience of dying, and then they go back to normal, and this like shocks them so much that they pass out. I thought that was really cool. The Vice Admiral Bluegrass that we haven't seen before, and her ability to ride, I thought was interesting. At first I thought she naturally looked like that, but I think we saw her in an earlier chapter younger, and I think this is after Bonnie has aged her up. So she has taken control of one of the Pacifista, and of course Bonnie has a lot of trouble fighting the Pacifista because they look like Kuma, who's her dad, and Sanji even comments on this and like, you got to get your act together. But so then we flash to the fights that are going on up in the Labo phase between Kizaru and Luffy and Zoro and Lucci. And what I love is that like Luffy's goal in this fight is to occupy Kizaru. And so he is using Gear 5, he's using everything he has simply to occupy Kizaru. But what I like about that is it says that Kizaru can't afford to leave either. If he runs, Luffy is going to be able to get him. And so it kind of like shows that there is an equality between these two characters in strength. And I think that's helpful to know. And it does explain a little bit why, you know, how like Luffy is going all out because he needs to hold Kizaru here. But the biggest thing in the chapter is everything that went on with Saint Saturn, and all the like the weird pentagram thing. I'm gonna be honest, if you guys have guesses to what's going on here, leave it in the comments. I saw something about, there's this yokai in Japanese, in Shinto, that is this spider bull demon thing, and that's what people think that is going on here. But what kind of strikes me about this is I don't know that I believe if I think this is a devil fruit ability that this man has, or if this is really what St. J. Garcia Saturn is. If he really is this spider bull monster demon thing, and his human form is an appearance that he puts on in front of other people. I'm interested to find that out. I think one of the reasons maybe the Five Elders have lived so long has to do with this, but this was definitely freaky. It was creepy in a different way than a lot of One Piece usually is. And even they say, like, Commodore and below cannot see him. And then we see one Marine look at him and his head explodes. And it seems like Jay Garcia made that happen. And so his head, like, explodes at that. He is freaky. His whole, like, body, I do not like the way his body is structured. It definitely is freaky. And the end of the chapter did not look too hot. Luffy is exhausted. Frankie, Sanji, Bonnie, Atlas, and Vegapunk are down in front of Saturn. And Bonnie has just stabbed Saturn. I obviously I don't think this is going to do anything to Saturn, but this is definitely an ominous way to end this chapter. But all in all, I thought it was a really good One Piece chapter, and one that definitely shifted the tone of this arc for me, with seeing what Saint Saturn really is or really looks like. I'm interested to find out more about that. Is this a Devil Fruit ability? I was really interested, before I wrap up, I was interested when Luffy is falling, after he runs out of time in Gear 5, as he's falling, Saint Saturn looks up and says, Nika. And this is what makes me, one of the things that makes me wonder, is he really whatever this demon, thing is this really who he is? And he's recognizing Luffy in his Gear 5th form as the sun god, Nika. So I'm so interested. It was a really good chapter. It was very, very cool. And I look forward to more One Piece. I always look forward to more One Piece. But those are my thoughts on One Piece this week. Next up, we will move to the color pages, and the first color page went to Blue Box, chapter 120 this week. And as always, you guys know, if you listen to this podcast often enough, I love Blue Box. The color page itself was cool. I like the characters that they decided to include. I think these are the main characters of the series now. And I really like all of them, so I thought it was a cool color page. But moving forward, we are moving into the new year. New freshman students are coming into Ame High School, where everybody goes, and so we, Taiki, Chono, and Ryu or Kyo are moved up to the second year position finally at their high school, and new first years are coming in, and they're all admiring Chono. I really love this, that they draw attention to Hina again, because like they have repeatedly said that how attractive Hina is. She is supposed to be very, very attractive, and as part of the rhythmic gymnastics team, she, as part of that team, right, she obviously would be like in kind of positions that would draw the attention of first years. And I just love the talk about that, and the talk about Chinatsu too. I just think I often think that Taiki is simply, this whole chapter paints these two as very attractive, very like top echelon of people that you would be interested in the school, and it paints Taiki as like an afterthought, right? And these two girls obviously both are interested in Taiki, or at least Hina was, and so I just think it's interesting to point that out. I love Taiki's little jealousness over them people talking about Chinatsu. I think that's really fun. And I love the introduction of Akari. I think Akari is going to be a character that is super interesting. I'm so glad she's here. A girl playing badminton is interesting. We get to see the girls' badminton team that we haven't seen at all. And then we also get our other new character, Yusa, our Yusa. Haruto is his first name, and he is the younger brother of the Yusa from Sajikawa. And so we now have both. We found out that Akari is the younger sister of one of the main people from Sajikawa, and Yusa is here too. So we got two Sajikawa descendants that are super threatening, and I like them both. I like how Haruto is so I like how he's so rude to the one teacher, but very respectful of the other people on the badminton team, of the captain and everything like that. And that he doesn't recognize Taiki is funny. I actually thought when I read the chapter that he was going to recognize Taiki, but he ended up not seeing him at all, which, makes sense. But what I love is, Haru's quotes towards Taiki. Taiki's standing right there, and he says to Yusa, he says, I've had enough of guys who are all talk and no walk. And then Taiki's like, who are you saying is all talk? Obviously, because Haru is talking about him, and they have this little side argument, and it's very funny. I really I love Haru and Taiki's relationship. I think it's so funny and so good. And this was just kind of emphasized that, and it was really funny. And then, of course, Taiki has an interaction with Akari that Akari seems to be interested in him, and Taiki genuinely, as he is a genuine guy, has given her advice about how to play badminton. She takes it and immediately improves, and so she definitely, there's something here, right? This is going to be an interesting development where I think maybe Akari might develop some feelings for Taiki as the story goes on, and maybe there's going to be a misunderstanding. Maybe this is it. Maybe Taiki even develops feelings for her. I don't know. I'm very interested about where we go from here, because again, the main arc of the story was building up to Chinatsu and Taiki getting together, and now that they have gotten together, I'm always wondering what's going to develop, what are the new things that are going to happen in this manga, and how are we going to keep this moving forward. So I love Blue Box. I thought it was a great Blue Box chapter. I love the characters that are introduced, and I'm excited to see what happens next. But those are my thoughts on Blue Box this week. And next we have Akane-Banashi, which got the color page again this week. This is the second color page in a row that Akane-Banashi has gotten. And this just goes to illustrate one of the points that I've been thinking for a while, and that's that I think Akane-Banashi is incredibly successful in Japan. And I actually think it's successful worldwide. The English volumes of Akane-Banashi are out. I have volumes 1 and 2, and that's up to date. That's the last English volume that was released. So, but just because this is such a new series running in the magazine, and it's already been translated into English, and it's selling well in English even, this is a popular series, and it's gonna hopefully be able to run for a long time in Weekly Shonen Jump and become this kind of outside the Shonen Battle staple of this. I'm always interested because Weekly Shonen Jump usually has run some kind of sports manga in its pages, but has for a long time now not had a true blue sports manga. But I think Akane-Banashi fills that role. It's just that the sport is Rakugo. It's not like an actual sport. But obviously we have another manga that started recently that kind of dips into the sports territory, but we'll get into that later. But Akane-Banashi got the color page, and it's like a Halloween themed color page, it's the main girls of Akane-Banashi there, all in different Halloween kind of costumes, and of course Akane is the witch, which is always the main character's thing. And so yeah, it looks good. It's a good color page. That's really all I gotta say about it. But the chapter itself was all about Chocho, and I love Chocho. This chapter just made me love him even more than I loved him last week. So we learned that he is big into gambling, even in he entered several mahjong competitions. Even though he's a Rakugoka, he's a professional Rakugoka, so he entered several competitions. And then we get to see him do his performance, and we hear from Master Hasho, that he is a Rakugoka, and he is a professional Rakugoka. So he entered several competitions. Even though he's a Rakugoka, he's a professional Rakugoka, so we get to see him do his performance, and we hear from Master Hasho, that he is a Rakugoka, and he is a professional Rakugoka. who's talking to Akane, we hear kind of the struggles of this, that this story is not a end of the show story, and people kind of are upset when they start to hear this story as the closer, because they know this is a short story, not a long story that is meant for the last speaker at a Rakugo event. So it's kind of strange, that it's a strange story to pick, but we learn that this is his problem. Chocho always gambles. He rolls dice before he goes out, and he lets those dice decide what story he tells. And of course, we see him tell this story amazingly throughout this chapter, with getting the crowd involved in personally calling out to them, and he ropes the crowd in with that work and makes them so anticipatory about what happens, that they all, when that tension is finally released, they all, their tension is all released. And then the chapter ends with the 2-page spread of Chocho. It says the natural gambler, Chocho Konjakute, and then Lady Luck is his tag there, and it's a great 2-page spread of him, and the dice, and just it's such a good depiction of him. This chapter, we just learn more about him. This is a gambler. He's a gambler. He's the gambler guy, and I'm so interested to see who his master is, and how that is, how that works out. I don't know if you know who his master is. In the comments, let me know. Let me know who his Shinichi teacher is, but I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know who it is. I wonder how they feel about his way of doing this and all of that. But yeah, so I thought it was a great chapter. I like Chocho so much. He's one of my favorite characters in Akane-Banashi now, so I really like him. But yeah, that was Akane-Banashi. And that will lead us into Jujutsu Kaisen. Chapter 238 came out this week. We have been seeing the fight with Sukuna continue through various other people. And so we continue to see that going on. Hajime, right, the lightning guy, is currently in this fight. And the narrator explains to us that the uniqueness of Sukuna's body actually allows him to do things that no other person is even capable of. And we even hear of his exploits in the past against other people, and how incredibly unstoppable he was, even against odds that seemed impossible. And Hajime is going to continue this fight, and the fight does continue, and it's a very cool fight. There's a lot of action. Hajime puts up a good definitely a good fight here, but rip. But Sukuna is just unable to stop. And so Sukuna begins to have a conversation with him about Hajime and Gojo and his own thoughts about love as this fight goes on. And right before what seems to be the end of Hajime, we see it flashes to an old Hajime at first, who then becomes younger later, standing on a cliff talking about love. And Sukuna seems to indicate that he has no need of love. And Hajime says, well, doesn't that get old? Doesn't it get boring to just take what you want? And Sukuna says, every human has a unique and fleeting taste, which makes devouring them a perfect way to pass time until death. And so we see, after presumably Hajime has lost his life to Sukuna, we see that the domain that Hikari has put up in the sky has broken, and out of that domain comes not only Hikari and the monk-looking lady that's on Sukuna's side, but also Yuji and the lawyer guy, whose name I should remember but don't remember right now. If you remember that name, put it down in the comments. But they come out of that domain, and it looks like they're ready to fight. I can't quite tell what's going on with Yuji's arms. If I was supposed to know what's going on with his arms, let me know. But I don't think that we were told that. And Sukuna kind of taunts him, saying, but what can a little boy hope to accomplish here? So we're moving into the next phase of the fight. I was recently talking to one of my friends and who said, why is the lawyer guy not more involved in this fight? Like, his ability, his curse technique seems like it could really be helpful here. And so I guess we're going to get to see. We're going to get to see if that his curse technique is able to affect Sukuna and take Sukuna down. But yeah, it was an incredibly interesting Jujutsu Kaisen chapter for sure. I really liked it. I thought it was awesome. So that's what I have to say about Jujutsu Kaisen. Next, we have Kagurabachi chapter 4. Again, this is one of the new ones going on in the series, although we're 4 chapters in now, so new is a little, hard to say. But we pick up where we left off last chapter with the sorcerer having captured Char and Chihiro getting ready to fight. So Chihiro is able to easily kind of recover her, and Shiba comes in for the save, grabs her, and teleports her to a nearby location. I love Shiba. Shiba is so interesting, and the way he uses his sorcery is so cool to me. So I really like that. But the rest of the chapter is Shiba explaining to Char kind of a little bit of what sorcery is, as well as Chihiro fighting this sorcerer that's in front of us. And we get to learn a little bit about Chihiro's abilities, about what he does. So it says, the enchanted blade amplifies the spirit energy inside a person and whips it up into such a hyper-concentrated form that the human body can no longer contain it. Once exposed, it takes on a shape. You could say that the goldfish is a mass of energy far greater than what a sorcerer can muster alone. Okay, so what this tells us is that, first of all, the goldfish are real. They can be seen, and they're not something that only Chihiro is seeing. There are things he's manifesting. And black seems to be this offensive ability to cut and slash things. All abilities are activated with the word Enten, but then black is used as this incredibly offensive move. And it looks like the sorcerer he's fighting has this ability to create Daruma dolls that explode. That seems to be the only thing he can do. And so he continues to do that and is decently adept. I mean, the explosions definitely are tough for Chihiro to cut through, to make it through. And he gives this speech to Char that, like, life is hopeless. And, of course, Chihiro uses the technique Red, which allows him to survive an explosion that he shouldn't have survived. And so we learn that the different colors, I knew there were going to be different colors of the blade. I knew that was going to matter to us. And so Red seems to be a, fire or maybe even just protection related ability, but I think it's a more protection than it is fire. It's a little hard to tell. The artwork is incredible, but it's a little hard to tell kind of what exactly is going on with the sorcery that Chihiro uses. But then he switches back to black for his slashes, but when he gets caught, he uses Red Invincible, which took this sorcerer's move and turned it back against him, and he exploded. And so Red seems to be something that absorbs the energy of the sorcery that's used against you, and you can even, release that out. But one of the biggest things we learned this chapter, we learned a lot of big things this chapter, but we learned that the sword that we're after right now is called Cloud Gouger. So that's the sword that we're going to be looking for. That's one of the 6 blades that was stolen, and so that's our first target, it looks like. And so I'm really excited. I like Char. I think Char's a fun addition to our little crew here, so I'm excited to see where Kagurabachi goes from here for sure. But that's kind of what I thought about Kagurabachi this week. Next up on our list, we have 2 on Ice, Chapter 3. Another one of the new ones. This is, I kind of alluded to this earlier when I said there wasn't a sports manga running. This is sort of a sports manga. I mean, it is a sports manga. It's a manga about ice skating, and figure skating is a sport. So we've got a sports manga, although I think that this is, covers a couple different genres, to be honest. But this chapter, we see that they have finally entered the pairs skating. Kisara and Hayuma have finally entered the pairs skating competition, and we find out that they are Japan's 6th pairs skating team. So what's really interesting about this is, Hayuma even says there's only 5 other pairs. There's only 10 other people in the country who are competitive pairs figure skaters. And at first I was like, that seems kind of crazy. There's only that many, but it does make sense. There's a lot less, glory to be gained in pairs figure skating, and so I could see why people would want not to do that. But obviously Kisara is set on it, and so this is the first time Hayuma gets to figure skate with the music playing in the background. And so this is such a cool, there's this really cool page. It's the whole page where there's like a trumpet as they're ice skating on the top, and it's just like, it is like the visible representation of the music throughout this chapter is really cool to see. It's awesome how music notes are like flying kind of with them as they're ice skating. It's really cool. I really think it's awesome. But this chapter really brings to light the shortcomings of Hayuma. Because he could only practice on a really small piece of ice at his schoolyard during the winters, he isn't used to using an entire rink for anything. That's a lot of space for him to use, and he tires out pretty quickly. And so at the beginning of this chapter, he's really tired. He has this trouble. His leg cramps up and all this stuff. But he's very determined. And this is the thing about Hayuma. He has that shonen protagonist energy of just continuing to grind away and to try and get better. And he does get better. He gets to the point where he almost is able to land a triple axel, and because he wants to catch up to Kisara. He doesn't want to hold her back in this pair's endeavor. And she makes him a deal that if he can master that, they will do a triple axel at the end of the live routine. And so they continue to practice, and he continues to get much, much better. And this chapter ends the day of the recital. They're there, they're on the ice, and they're ready to go. They're in their uniforms. It looks great. It's very interesting, and they're there. And Kisara says, "You better make me show off my full potential." First of all, I really like the relationship that Hayuma and Kisara have. I think it's a really cool relationship. I really like them. I like them as a pair. I like them as our main characters. And so I'm very interested to see how this goes. In the next chapter, we're probably going to get to see a lot of this performance and see how Hayuma does here. But I loved it. I thought this was a great chapter. This is a great 2 on Ice chapter, and I think that this manga might be a success. We might have a breakout success on our hands, because I think it's going to scratch an itch kind of similar to Blue Box. This kind of more, we'll say, effeminate kind of style, artistic style. I think that more of that could be in the magazine, and it could help and be popular in the magazine. So I like this manga. I like what this chapter did. But those are my thoughts on 2 on Ice this week. The next chapter we got to go over is Undead Unluck, chapter 178 that came out this week. This is the chapter where Rip is supposed to take off of his legs, and he's arguing with Latla at the beginning. She's like, "This is such a big deal. How can you make this decision so quick?" Which is interesting, and obviously we get that payoff at the end of the chapter. And you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit. I don't understand. So we see at the end of the chapter that Rip has taken one leg off and replaced it, and Latla has taken the other leg off and replaced it. And they together are sending this slash. Here's my confusion. I don't understand. I mean, I think that even if Rip only has one leg, he'll still be just as effective as if he had the two legs that he had in the last loop. But I don't understand why Latla getting a leg removed would matter. I mean, she doesn't have unrepair, which is the whole reason why this is effective. So I don't understand why she has this, why she went through this, or why she would have to go through this, other than to have that, kind of camaraderie alongside someone. But to remove your leg is a lot, to do that for nothing seems like a lot. So that was confusing at the end of this chapter. If you have a better idea of kind of why that happened, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to talk about that and kind of get that straight in my head, because I really didn't understand. But most of this chapter was about Uma Sick and his fight against the Union. And oh my word, was he so cool! Oh, he was so cool. I think Sick is awesome. every time he uses an attack, and like he obviously his like music related thing, which is kind of funny. I didn't actually expect him to have the music kind of ability thought there at all, so that was kind of a surprise. But he fights the Union, and they put up a good fight, but they're not able to get him down, and he is definitely winning. I just love his, like, I am what makes the world beautiful, I keep it stocked just right, and all of that. And there is some truth to the fact that if there were, if no one ever died, there would be too many of us. That's true, and resources would be incredibly scarce. But he's taking like a sick pleasure in this that I don't think anyone likes. But also we get to see Fuko shoots another bad bullet, and so we get to see part of that coming back in the form of the slash hitting Sick on his arm and cutting his arm off, and that's where we end the chapter. Although Sick at the end of the chapter he looks amused, not like he's gonna die. So we'll see. I thought it was a good chapter, but like I said, I was kind of confused about the ending where Rip and Latla are there together, and they each have one leg gone. But we'll see kind of how it continues. So yeah, I like the chapter. I like the Union fighting Sick. I thought all the stuff with Sick was awesome, but that's really all I had to say about Undead Unluck this week. And that will bring us to our next chapter, which is Sakamoto Days, chapter 138. And we continue the fight with Hisuke and Kamihate, the two snipers, going at each other. And Kamihate, sprays him with water, tries to electrocute him here, and he's saved by Pisuke, the little bird who saves him. And so this chapter is really cool from the sniping perspective. He's able to... we see, at the end they're jumping around buildings and stuff, and he shoots Hisuke through a building, but Hisuke in this really cool... Sakamoto Days choreography has always been so cool. This artist is able to draw these fights in the coolest way imaginable. They're so awesome. But Hisuke is able to curve the bullet around the building to get to the other side and to hit Kamihate, even though he gets hit too. And then they have the cool train standoff thing, where they both fire, and Hisuke is hit, and Kamihate ends up behind him. And Hisuke, of course, using his genius intellect, fakes him out and simply points the gun at him and almost gets him. And we see that the cover above Kamihate is coming off, and Hisuke seems to recognize who it is, but it doesn't look good. It looks like Kamihate is about to end his life. So we will see what happens next chapter. I highly doubt Hisuke is going to die. I think we're going to learn what Kamihate looks like next week, and what their relationship is there. If I had to take a stab, I think that maybe somehow Hisuke and Kamihate are related. That's my guess. But I don't know if it's his long-lost dad, or maybe an uncle. I don't know, some relative. I think that's maybe what's going to happen here. So yeah, but I liked the chapter. I thought it was good. It was an awesome one visually. And the fight was just great. I think that this is probably the end of our sniper fight that we've had for the last couple weeks, but it was a great end to that fight. But that's what I had to say about Sakamoto Days this week. And with that, we will move right into the next chapter, which was Mama Yuyu. Chapter 5 came out this week, and we get to learn a little bit more about Alicia, the hero from another dimension, the 24-year-old girl that we met. And so it looks like Corleo is able to talk to women. I was worried that he wasn't going to be able to talk to women, and we were going to have to do that, but he was just a weirdo initially. And so we, at first, have to kind of get through that with some really actually deep conversation between Corleo and Alicia about life and about why we go on living. Alicia's mother had wanted her to live so bad that she sacrificed her own life, and so this is important that Alicia stays alive, and she wants to have this conversation with Corleo about what she should do now, about how she should continue to live. I think that's a very human conversation and a very real conversation. I think this is a strength of this manga that I missed in the first couple chapters, and that's that this manga is able to bring out this very human and very raw emotion in their writing. And so I think that I have been overlooking that. And so I really, really like this chapter. I thought that this was maybe one of the best chapters of Mama Yuyu that's come out so far. I really liked it. But of course, this weird dude in a top hat showed up, and it seems like he summoned the monster. The little bat monster that came after them, it seems like he summoned it when he snapped. And it also seems like they did not notice his presence. He was sitting in between them, and it seems like he wasn't always there, but he ends up there. He was sitting in between them, and then he snaps, and the demon's there, and he is gone. I have a lot of questions about this. I want to know how he's related to the monsters. Is he the demon lord from Evan's dimension? And he's just summoning these eyeball creatures? You know, is that what's going on? So I'm really interested in that. I want to see what's going on there. I love Corleo's determination to fight this thing. First of all, this is the first one that seems weak enough that Corleo, as he is now, could stand a chance. Right? I think that this is a great opponent for him, that he can showcase his abilities, and obviously Alicia showcased her abilities by punching the ground. I think that she is probably a character that's going to be around to stay. I don't think she's going to disappear, although I could be wrong. I was wrong about Evan. I thought Evan was going to stay too. But Corleo is able to use that sigil sorcery and jump up to grab the bat monster and slam him down on the top of the fence or whatever he pierces him with, and takes him out. This is Corleo's first win by himself, which is awesome to see, that he actually beat this monster, this demon, whatever we're calling them in this series, by himself. That was awesome. And we see that Alicia has taken this to mean that she needs to go with him, and he is what she will live for now. So this is why I think that she's probably going to be in this cast. At first I thought this seems like there's too big of an age gap for this to be a romantic thing, but I don't think that's true. She is much older than him, but he says, I believe he's 18 in this chapter. I know last chapter it told us that how old he was. So I know that it says that. But anyway, they're not that far apart in age that it's unacceptable. But it seems a little strange. But we'll see. Maybe this is more of a maternal caring instinct more than it is a romantic one, which is possible. But either way, I love this chapter. I legitimately thought this might be one of the best Mama Yuyu chapters that has come out so far. It was very good. But that's pretty much all I got to say about Mama Yuyu. And that will bring us to the next chapter, which is Martial Master Asumi, chapter 16. So we come back into the fight. This is round 2. Nito versus his opponent, whose last name is Sakura, or Kinojo, right? Kinojo Sakura, I'm pretty sure. And he is in the second round, and the goal for the second round is for Nito to prove that he is in it for the long haul, that he's going to be a pro, that he is going to fight well, and that he can take out an opponent like this. And so he has to analyze Kinojo. He has to analyze him and see kind of how he reacts to things. And so we learn a lot actually in this chapter. One of the things that we learn about fighting is this technique called sprawling, which is where you stop an opponent from being able to tackle you by coming up over top of them, and we see Kinojo able to do that to him. We also see a Russian hook, which is an unorthodox way of punching, utilizing the rotation of the shoulder instead of the hips. And so we see that is an interesting move that we got to learn about in this chapter too. But all of these unorthodox moves, Kinojo has just learned on the street. He's learned from brawling people in the street. But this is ultimately his downfall when Nito continues to chip away at him and to figure out his weaknesses, and he ends up using the flying knee on Kinojo and then hits him, and Kinojo seems to almost pass out, but he continues to stand. But Nito, always the genius, always the high IQ, high martial arts IQ that Nito is, ends up getting a standing ninja choke on him. He grabs him around the neck, and so he's going to make him pass out. while he's standing, which is perfect. I also think it shows some consideration that Nito has for his opponent. Kanojo won't fall down. He desperately wants to not bend the knee to another man. And so this is a way that Nito wins without that knee bending. So this is really interesting, and I love how into this Nito is. I love this manga. Martial Master Asumi is a manga that snuck up on me. I didn't think I would be that into it when it first started, but man, do I love this manga. I like combat sports in general, but this is just a really good manga, I think, all around, all things considered. So yeah, I really like this manga. I love what Martial Master Asumi is doing, but that's kind of what I had to say about Martial Master Asumi this week. Next up, we have Nuei's Exorcist. Chapter 21 came out this week, and this concludes the fight with Moriyuki that we had last week, and we see just how much he got his butt handed to him, for sure. What is interesting about this chapter is how close both combatants were to the edge of their abilities. He was able to push Nue farther than he even thought he could. And in fact, I love the flashback to his conversation at the Fujino household, where he's told, hey, we'll send as many people with you as you want, and he says, no, I alone can do it. And the reason he says that is because he is the only one that wants to fail. He wants the punishments to be contained to himself if he goes to fail. And so Moriyuki is definitely a sympathetic character. He was kind of a sympathetic character from the outset, so that's not really that surprising, honestly, but we get more of that this chapter, and I think that he's probably going to join our hero team eventually, but maybe not. What he does serve to do in this chapter is give some humanity to our opponents, to the Fujino family. He clearly represents what he thinks is the good guy. Also, as an aside, we get a lot of more information about how Nuei's powers work, specifically through Gakuro. How Gakuro is pretty much he can only produce a little bit of her energy, but she had this device within him that allowed her to exceed that. But because she exceeded it so much in this fight, she actually destroyed it. And so now she needs Gakuro to grow in his ability to be a medium for her power if she wants to get powerful again. And the chapter ends with a very interesting conversation where Moriyuki tells Gakuro what Nue is, that she's this thing that creates spirits. And for some reason, after he says this, right, Gakuro looks determined. I'm really interested to see what next chapter is. I think that maybe there's more here, but Nue definitely seems like the bad guy here, and that's not really surprising to me, honestly. I wonder what Gakuro is thinking right now, and we don't have that luxury. We don't get to see that, but there is some reason why he's not wavering. He is determined to continue down this path, and so I want to see what that is, and we'll wait till next week to see that. But yeah, that's all I had to say about Nuei's Exorcist this week. So that will bring us to our next manga this week, which was Cipher Academy. Chapter 43 is the one that came out this week. So, you might know, if you've listened to some of these podcasts before, that Cipher Academy hasn't been my favorite manga running. I think it's kind of complicated, and it's maybe I don't have a big enough brain to understand it, but sometimes I miss some of the codes, right? But this chapter, great chapter. So we continue with Irohazaka as he makes his way through the online, the Cipher Academy, through a series of different tests, and we get to see some of the other classmates and where they are and what their levels look like, and most importantly, we get to see the three people that are watching this take place: Kagoe, Seppun, and Nohime. And we learn that Nohime lost her eyesight to a prototype of this game. And that what happens is, if you lose this game, your brain gets scrambled. It's the device damages your brain in proportion with the damage experienced in the virtual reality. But this chapter really highlighted Koshibai and Koshibai's involvement with Irohazaka. I really think that this is cool. I love Koshibai's like just love of games, you know, and how this is what has sustained her through this process, and that's why she wants to go, is she just wants to challenge herself. I love that Iroha's the one who found out that it wasn't the big bomb but a small bomb behind it that was the real test. I thought that was really cool. And the end of this chapter was kind of bananas. I mean, with the last level, the level that Irohazaka and Koshibai are on, seemingly blowing up, that was kind of crazy. And we see even like Irohazaka's little hair thing bounce off the ground, broken. So, you know, I don't think Irohazaka and Koshibai are dead here, right? I don't think that they actually got hit. I think something else went on. I'm not sure, but we'll have to find that out next week. You know, obviously I don't think this is the end of Cipher Academy, although I guess it could be, but I highly doubt that. I think Irohazaka and Koshibai are fine, and we'll have to figure that out next week. But that's really all I had to say about Cipher Academy this week. I just thought it was a good chapter. And that will bring us to our next chapter, which is Icehead Gill, chapter 15. That's the next one that came out this week. Icehead Gill is a tough one for me. The art style is actually hard for me to follow. So when they're deep in action, it's a little difficult for me to actually follow the action in this manga. And some manga are just like that. You know, I have a harder time following the art styles of their choreography and their fights and all of that. So sometimes it's just like that, and this is one of those ones that seems to just be like that for me. But we see the aftermath of Gill winning his fight that we saw him win last chapter. We see that aftermath. Greatest is here. He takes care of the rest of the fight. And even though Sliz is supposed to kill Gill, he can't do it. He wants him to continue getting stronger. And we learn that Greatest's little brother died to the Liches. So the whole, you know, thing with the trolls has been summed up. It's over, and we are about to leave. We're about to leave here and go on, you know, go forward from this place. And the last thing we see is we finally see a picture of Dreki in his Lich form, right? He's been taken over by the Liches, and we finally see Dreki's soul at the end of this chapter. Interestingly, it says that the one troll who was turned into a Lich says he has pieces of Gill Soul's corpse, which is strange to me, although the axe handle definitely did come off. I don't remember Gill's arm and leg being severed. And in fact, he has two arms in this chapter. So I don't know what they are or what this Lich is talking about, but they're apparently there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next chapter. It was fine. It was an interesting chapter. We'll see kind of what happens as this manga goes forward. But I will say, this isn't my favorite manga running in the magazine right now, and I think that as we look forward to what things might get canceled in the next round, I do worry about Icehead Gill and whether it has the staying power and the popularity to be able to continue in the magazine. But that's a conversation for another day. But that's all I had to say about Icehead Gill this week. Next, we have Kill Blue, chapter 24 is what came out this week. And this is just, you know, this is another Kill Blue chapter. We're back to the funny antics with Ogami. He is avoiding Noren like the plague. We see him do some crazy stuff to avoid her. And Noren, kind of like as she is like pursuing him, is also really interesting. You know what I noticed also this chapter is how similar, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but how similar Noren looks to Ogami's ex-wife. What was her name? Wanabuchi? Miss Wanabuchi? Their faces and like even the hair looks remarkably similar to each other. So that's interesting to me. I don't think that was an accident by the author. It seems intentional. But maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it isn't intentional, but it doesn't seem that way. Also, I loved when he goes back to the guy he calls master at school, and he's like, "You went on a double date with my sister. You suck." Which is really funny, you know, and of course that happens. That's such a high school thing to happen. But we kind of, through Miss Wanabuchi, we kind of get the idea that going forward in the story, what we're going to do is we're going to look for Jarden. We're going to look for Jarden and those assassins to try and get more information about what has turned Ogami into a kid. And the rest of the chapter is pretty much him getting trapped into Norin confessing her feelings for him, and Norin being extremely athletic and catching up. So it's really funny. She's like very determined. It is hilarious. I really wonder what the plan is for this to happen. We know that the hypnosis is eventually going to wear off and the Norin will go back to normal, but this really feels genuine. The chemistry that Norin and Ogami have built together does feel genuine and real, and in a more romantic way than you're really comfortable with. So if you guys disagree with me, leave that down in the comments. I'd love to talk about this and whether you guys think that this story is pushing for Ogami to maybe be a kid or, forever and grow up with Norin and actually be romantically involved. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, but I think based on the way they've showcased this, it will be tough for them to do that. But yeah, let me know. But that's really all I had to say about Kill Blue this week. Which will bring us to Me and Roboco, chapter 156 is the one that was released this week. And I gotta say, I'll say at the outset, this Me and Roboco chapter was really funny, guys. I think it was quite hilarious. In its homages to various things, right? So Roboco writes another manga, for publication in Weekly Shonen Jump, and she's taken inspiration from all of these other manga. One of the things that I thought was interesting about this manga is the manga, right? This, like, when Bondo speaks in this chapter, it's pretty much the mangaka, like the things that he says probably are true. And we see that Roboco was kind of an homage to this character from, I think it's called To Love Ru, which was a much earlier Shonen Jump manga that I have seen but never read. I've never gotten into that one. I don't know that I would be that into it, but and I never knew that. I never knew that Roboco was an homage like that. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting to learn. But the manga Roboco comes up with is hilarious. I love the constant, references to everything, right? And Roboco's response always being, "Well, aren't we allowed to do that? I mean, how can you tell it's this?" It's so funny. He's so funny. If you look at the character she drew, he has the tattooed on his bicep, he has Norman's number from the Promised Neverland. He's got the dragon or the turtle symbol on his other bicep. He's got Ichigo's sword and something else on the other side of his over his back, and it's really funny to see. He's like this amalgamation of all these things, and then he's an elementary school teacher is funny, and then it just becomes the Promised Neverland. Now there were a couple references, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't get, and one is the sister Ran. Clearly there is another Ran, and I probably should have looked this up before I recorded the podcast, but there's clearly another Ran, like sister Ran in another show that's not a Jump manga, so they couldn't actually name it in this manga, it seems like, and obviously along with the biker gang thing that they can't name either. So the thing that actually, there was one joke in this chapter that made me actually crack up out loud, and that was the Tokyo Revenders joke, which is really funny to me when I read it. I love that it's actually published too. That was so funny. I'll say this about Me and Roboco. If you are a fan of Shonen Jump in general, if you have a good working knowledge of Weekly Shonen Jump and the different series that have run in it, there are gags in Me and Roboco that are going to really make you laugh, that are going to make you remember these series and definitely be funny to you. But yeah, I liked it this week. I really liked it. I laughed out loud, which I don't often, like actually belly laugh out loud like that. So that was really good. I really like me and Roboco this week, but that's really all I had to say about it. And that will bring us to the next series that we gotta go over, which is Mission Yozakura Family. This week, chapter 197 was released, and so we continue with the wedding, Shinzo's wedding, and we learn more about it. Taiyo is talking to Alpha and Hifumi, saying, hey, you can get my stamp if we can get this done. And so Taiyo has learned to trust Alpha and Hifumi more than he did before, but also we learn the backstory of what's going on here. We learn who Takemi was. He was a weaponsmith. It was Shinzo's original master and Katana's real father, birth father, and how he wanted Ryu he thought it would be good if Shinzo and Katana got married one day, and Ryu has taken this as gospel truth and wants them to be married. Now, what's interesting is, first of all, Ryu is incredibly strong, but we knew that before. We knew that he wasn't a pushover in any sense of the word. But the Yozakura family gets up and begins to fight, specifically Kyoichiro and Futaba, get up and begin to fight him after hearing this backstory, which is admittedly dumb. But Taiyo, Alpha, and Hifumi have a different plan, and they, begin to execute the plan with Alpha and Hifumi taking the mics and introducing a letter and a song. So this is interesting. We'll see where it goes. This little mini arc of Mission Yozakura Family isn't the most interesting to me in the world, but I like what we get to see in Taiyo. We haven't seen... Taiyo is a main character that I've always liked in Mission Yozakura Family, and we haven't gotten to see a lot of him since Alpha and Hifumi came onto the scene. So it's good to see him interacting with his kids and all of that. So I thought that was really good. But that's really all I had to say about Mission Yozakura Family this week. And that will bring us to the Elusive Samurai. Chapter 128 came out this week. This is the chapter where the fight between Tokiyuki and Ienaga begins. I was so hyped for this last week, and of course I was, because of course Ienaga was ready. His sword, Hayate-bachi, is super cool. I love that his sword has, most of it is hollowed out, so that it is much lighter, and you think that wouldn't really add that much weight, but it absolutely does. One of the things that's kind of, the Elusive Samurai is a historical manga, but it doesn't hold super close to the history. It's not trying to retell the history in a visual form. It's telling a story that has ties to Japanese history. And this sword is one of them. This is not a real thing. I don't believe it's possible, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you know, I don't believe it's possible to make a katana like that with these holes with the technology that they had. We could probably do it. But my other question is, if you had a katana like this, it would probably be very brittle and easily breakable. And that's not what you want, although his fighting style is based on piercing, so that's, he's got that going for him. But all in all, his fight here is incredible. I love Ienaga's determination, his desire to see this through is incredible. He's such a cool character. And Ake's command to Tokiyuki to fight full force is also really good, and how I love, there's this concept of swords having weight, because the bearer of the sword bears such a responsibility and such a heavy weight and burden that the sword itself has that weight. But in this case, they almost flipped that on its head by saying the sword got lighter in Tokiyuki's hands because he remembered all the people that stand behind the sword. The reason the sword's moving, is moving and is attacking Ienaga. And so this fight, the choreography of this fight was very cool, as always. I love Yoroshige's quote, "The greater the destiny you bear, the lighter and sharper this blade becomes." Onimaru is a cool sword, and I do actually believe that might be the real name of the sword that the real Hojo Tokiyuki used. But again, correct me in the comments. I could be wrong there. So the last thing we see is Tokiyuki has an idea, and he's running up the stairs toward Ienaga's army. So we'll see what happens next week, but this is a great chapter, a great fighting chapter, and yeah, we'll just have to see what happens next week. But that's kind of all I have to say about the Elusive Samurai this week. Next up this week, we have the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins, Chapter 44, that came out, and we get the aftermath of Sota deciding he's going to just blend in with the rest of the family, right? We began to see this last week in this chapter. I think, actually, I made this my number one pick last week. And this chapter was really good again. Tsubasa is unable to accept that Sota just wants things to go back to normal, and we see him struggle with this and wrestle with what Shiori's telling him and what everybody's kind of going along. And he does several things like pouring the soy sauce in his mom's hands to kind of upset her, and then flipping the whole table over and telling Sota not to forget, and really telling them all not to forget. I love that he brings out the camera. Actually, when I read this chapter, I thought he smashed the camera, but we don't actually see him do that. Maybe he brings out the smashed camera to remind Sota, but I thought he smashed it again. And if so, this has turned Tsubasa, this guy who is loving and caring, into this hard, like, he's going to get out of this dream. He is hardened, and he is going to make it out. I love this about Tsubasa. I think it's really cool. I really like this manga. This is a great chapter of the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins. It hit all the right notes that it has to hit. So yeah, I thought it was a really great chapter this week. I think I liked last week's chapter, honestly, a little better, if I'm being honest, but this was very good. The relationship it's just come to a head. The relationship that Tsubasa has with the rest of his family has just come to a head, and we have to see what happens from here on out. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the Ichinose Family Deadly Sins this week. Which will bring us to our last entry this week, which was Witch Watch, chapter 128. I don't love seeing Witch Watch as the last one we cover, or towards the end every week. I don't know that the Viz website table of, ordering has anything to do with the real table of contents, or if that even has really anything to do with the ranking of how series are going. But I love Witch Watch, and I hope it continues for a while, although maybe it is entering some of its final phases. But anyway, that's not what this chapter is about. This chapter, Moe realized that Ran is using is overusing his lungs, and so he has to use the Kaigoku technique to continue to hit his lungs, and he certainly does. I mean, he hits him a ton of times. This is a really cool fight. Always, the choreography is really cool. I love Ran slicing his own neck to blind Morihito after he does this, and Morihito using the lights to kind of find him again. Oh, and Ran, like, with his arm, takes his arm off. It's so cool. First of all, the removing of the arm is so realistic. It's kind of actually surprising to me how, it fits the art style, that has been throughout this manga, but it's very interesting. And Moe is down. I mean, he has been hit down for the count, and I love that, Ran kind of giving him this, speech of you're the strongest opponent I've ever faced. I'm proud that I'll get to say I beat you before I died, Morihito. You were a little brother to me. I believe it. I believe that what he's saying is true, and that Ran is in so much agony that this is what he has to do. And of course, Moe uses the technique at the last second and is able to stab him in the arm with the vampire tree. And hopefully siphon that energy up. So it looks like our guys won, and I'm not surprised by that. Of course Moe won this fight. Of course they found the rose, and of course they got it into him. But what I love the relationship between Moe and Ran, and I think it's a very complicated one and a very real one. So I love that. I look forward to seeing where we go in Witch Watch from here. This little arc seems to have ended itself, or maybe it'll come to a close next chapter, but there is someone bigger out here that we have to deal with. There's another warlock who has sent this group to take out Nico, and we need to find them. And so I'm excited about the future of Witch Watch, as I always am. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Witch Watch this week. Well, folks, that brings us to the wrap up for another weekly Shonen Jump podcast. Before we go, I do want to let you know My Hero Academia was on break this week. In case obviously I didn't cover a My Hero Academia chapter this week, and that's because it was on break. Hopefully, I believe it'll be back next week, so that's good. And as always, I want to give you guys my top three, my top three manga this week, and I want you guys to leave your top three manga down in the comments. Give me your top three. I'd love to see that in the comment section. But this week, my top three, number 3 went to Mama Yuyu. I like this chapter. I think this is the best chapter of that series so far, and I like that Corleo finally got in there. And so I think it deserves that spot. Number 2 is me and Roboco. It made me laugh a lot as I talked about my review of it, and so that's number 2. And number 1 is, you probably guessed it, One Piece. The revelation of whatever is going on here with Saint Saturn is huge. It's monumental, and I think it has further implications for the story. So that's where I am. That's kind of my top 3 this week. But like I said, leave your top 3 down in the comments. Leave any comments you have at all about any of the series I talked about, or about Weekly Shonen Jump in general. Leave them in the comments. I'd love to engage with those and talk with you guys about Weekly Shonen Jump. It's obviously something I really enjoy. Also, like and subscribe to my channel if you're on YouTube. I hopefully will be able to produce this podcast every week, and hopefully get some other videos going here and there. I did a video about Luffy and grief recently, so go check that out if you haven't already. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate this episode, leave a review. That helps out immensely. So yeah, thanks guys so much for listening, and until next time, this is Shonen Express signing off.